a little long, but hold on. The book comes out in a few more months. But those of you who want to take advantage of the pre-order at a substantial discount, you can go now to Amazon.com. You put in the search section book, and then either my last name or Worker in the Light. Hey, John, I've got to ask you about that bumper song we played by the Byrds, 242 Foxtrot. Was that you in the background, I heard?
That's me, and Mylon Haven was the co-pilot. And I got to tell you a funny story
here.
Cigar Aficionado magazine in October of 2003 made a big, lavish story with many pictures. It was 7 pages long about the 40th anniversary of the first flight of the Learjet. Now, I read this story, and I'll tell you, for a magazine like Cigar Aficionado, I can't believe there was not one single fact in that story that was correct. And I wrote Marvin Shankin and asked him about it. Of course, never heard about it. But just let me read you what they wrote about. They interviewed Roger McGuinn, who was with the Byrds, and they said, well, you know, what was it like flying with John Lear? And I'm quoting from Roger in the magazine article. He says, John once gave us a ride from Los Angeles to Pensacola for a Byrds gig. McGuinn recalls, I think it was fellow Byrds members Dave Crosby, Chris Hillman, and Gene Clark and myself, and we had Peter Fonda along. We came into Pensacola at too high an altitude, and John did a maneuver called a split S to get down. I was sitting in the cockpit with him, and John was just a kid like us. He liked to go fast. He explained that the split S to me was a steep dive that would have us coming out upside down at the bottom. I'm agreeing with him, and I'm saying, you better tell the guys back there to buckle up. Well, says McGuinn, who was feeling a bit ornery that day, I didn't bother. The daring maneuver in the Learjet 24 left the passengers in the rear a little spooked, but otherwise unhurt. They could thank the man who created the Learjet in the first place for the plane's dexterity in tight situations, which has always been one of its attractions. Now, George, can you imagine a magazine like Cigar Aficionado printing a story like this about a guy who's flying Part 121, airlines? I mean, it was just
strange.
Okay, so as a gag, I wrote Clay Lacy, who I was working for Clay Lacy Aviation at the time, and this was back in 1966, and so October 5th, 2003, I said, Dear Clay, if you haven't seen the latest issue of Cigar Aficionado, I am closing an excerpt. I have kept this incident secret for many years, but now that it is all over the newsstands and I am retired, I can finally tell the truth. First of all, we really were late letting down into Pensacola. Hell, we were 30 miles past it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. First of all, since I was going to try and make it nonstop from Van Nuys to Pensacola, I had taken the inspection plates off the front part of the tip tanks and topped them off. By the time I got all the Byrds guitars and stuff loaded, I was really beat. We were so heavy that I leveled off at 37,000, set .77 on the autopilot, and asked center for block 37,000 to 41,000. Of course, this was back in the old days when it was pretty easy to do. I was letting each of the band members sit for a little while in the right seat. When it was Dave Crosby's turn, he offered me a toke. Normally, I try not to smoke dope while I'm on duty, but it happened to be some incredible Maui Wowie, and I thought, what the hell? It would probably wear off in the 3 remaining hours of the flight. The flight went great. Everybody was having a good time, singing and laughing and telling jokes, until I became vaguely aware that center was calling and asking if I wanted descent. Here I was at 60,000 feet, the airplane was at 41,000 feet, and it turns out we were 30 miles past Pensacola. I thought the best way to reverse course and lose altitude was to do a split S. So I asked center for lower and permission to reverse course, which they approved. Unfortunately, in all the excitement and the fact that I was still a little foggy, I started the split S but forgot the half roll at the top. What I had done, in fact, was the first half of an outside loop, which is why I ended up upside down at the bottom of descent. Of course, I told McGuinn that this was the way it was done, and he didn't know anything about it anyway. I flipped the airplane right side up and landed without further incident. Of course, the rest of the guys in the back were, in fact, a little spooked. Heck, I was spooked, and I was flying the gall darn thing. But nobody was actually hurt, and I did thank Dad for making the airplane with great dexterity in tight situations to save me. Sorry you had to find out about it this way, Clay, your friend and admirer.
I love it. I love it. What did he do? What did he do when he got that?
Nothing. I called down to the guys that knew him, and he made just one under his breath comment. He said, "That's a lot of bull."
Hey, John, there's so much to talk with you, so little time. But I want to get into your thoughts about planets and that they're inhabited. And definitely I want to talk about Apollo 1. But also, some time ago, you had an opportunity to meet Bob Lazar. I want to get your take on what you think of Bob Lazar. I mean, do you find him to be credible? Do you think he's legit?
Absolutely, 100%, 120%. What anybody ever says, about Bob, disparaging Bob, I can tell you, I was the guy that was there. I was the one that he took to see he took me to see the flying saucer. He knew exactly when it was going to fly. He's the one that got a hold of the 115. I'm the one that saw the experiment. Him and Joe Vaninetti and myself made the experiment.
And the 115 being the element that
the powers the saucer.
The powers the saucers, okay.
And what we did is we took a bell jar and we put a piece of dry ice and we put the 115 on the dry ice, then took a Coleman lantern, one of those little, what do they call them, the little lantern panels or whatever they are, that shines light, and these are partially radioactive.
The reflectors?
Yeah, they are partially radioactive, and they're the ones that cause the light in the lantern to be so bright.
All right.
And they shoot out alpha rays. Now, the alpha rays are supposed to go out into space at, the speed of light, but we have videotape of that, the alpha rays being, pulled back down into the 115. So, the bottom line is Bob was real. The whole incident was real. Everything happened exactly as Bob said it did, and I said it did. I've seen the Dan Burrish tapes. As far as I know, he never met Bob, but the stuff that he talks about certainly indicates that S4 is real and that it's there.
And to some people who do not know who Bob Lazar is, he was a self-styled nuclear physicist. He worked at the S4 test site, which is very close to Area 51 in Nevada, back in, 88 to 89.
88 and 89. I met him the summer of 88, and he came over here with Gene Huff, and Gene Huff was a real estate appraiser. And Gene had called me on the phone, and he said, I've heard about all your stuff. I'd like to get some of your tapes. And at that time, I had just been totally swamped with people that want something, and I wasn't too interested. And he said, I'm a real estate appraiser. And at that time, I was looking to get my house refinanced. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. If you come over and appraise my house, I'll give you all the stuff I had. So he came over, and the guy that was helping him hold the tape to measure the rooms was this guy, Bob Lazar.
He was helping the appraiser?
Yeah. And so we sit down and talk, and we're talking about UFOs, and Bob is rolling his eyes, and he says, look, I have to tell you guys, I worked at Los Alamos. I had the highest clearance you can get. And he said, if there was anything like this, I would have known. This is all pure BS. Well, over the next 4 months, and that would have been July, August, September, November, October, we gave Bob some information that he could check out with his friends at Los Alamos.
Right.
One was the existence of the YY-2 facility, which was really secret. Now, we were told that was where EBE-3 was kept. But whether he's kept there or not, the fact was that Bob found out that, yes, that place did exist. And a number of other things he found out, and he decided to re-enter the scientific community. And that's when he called Dr. Teller, and I was there when he called Dr. Teller. And he said, I'd like to re-enter the scientific community. And Teller says, do you want to work in Las Vegas, or do you want to work at Lawrence Livermore with me? And Bob said, I want to work at Area 51. And Teller said, well, let me see what I can do. And so then a few days later, Bob gets a phone call from some guys at EG&G, and he went over, and over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, got 3 security interviews. And on the second security interview, and of course he told us all what they asked him, the first question was, do you know John Lear, and what's your opinion of him?
Interesting.
And he said, yes, I know John Lear, and I believe he sticks his nose in places where it doesn't belong. And Bob said, what I didn't tell them is I also like to stick my nose in places
exactly.
it doesn't belong. So then the next thing I heard is, I think it was